What's up, everyone? How's it going? Welcome to today's market analysis or trade recap episode. Today is May the 22nd. We took one pretty good trade and we marked out several areas that we were going to analyze with the footprint and also Bookmap as well. So let's dive straight into this and let's do this. So let's go over our overall structure here for today, right? Essentially, we had all our levels marked out like typical, but prior to market open, what we saw was that our lower liquidity area had gotten swept, and then we started seeing a splurge of buyers enter into the market. So with that and with the volume profiles as well, that put us into a bullish bias at least until we hit our next key level or we see reaction from Bookmap liquidity. And that's honestly exactly what happened. The same goes for ES as well. We swept lower liquidity here and then waited for a move up until either this zone or this level right here. And once again, that's exactly what happened. And this is the main liquidity level too. That means it's important on the 4-hour time basis, which is pretty high significance. So essentially, market opened and price was actually on a retracement period at that point. But then soon after, we started making a big leg towards the upside. And we were just on the sidelines watching to see, because we're still in a bullish bias, right? What I'm looking for is to see if there's any retracement in which you can enter to target this higher level. But around this area, honestly, there was not much retracement at all, and there was no availability for me to enter any trades. But what we saw was that once we reached this level up near the highs, what happened to price was very interesting, and we had initiated a reversal model that resulted in a winning trade. So let's analyze that real quick. Before we get into our Bookmap analysis, I want to say shout out to Alex with Think with Bookmap. Great resource. I highly recommend you guys to take a look and use. Go ahead and subscribe to his channel even. But around that level, we go back to the time period real quick. So when we came to that liquidity level here on ES and NQ, what we saw was that we were entering into a barrier here on Bookmap, right? That means that visibly there are lots of passive sellers within the market. And that doesn't mean that there has to be a reversal there. And most of the times they're just broken through, as you can see this lower level being broken through right there. I'm looking for a reaction, and I'm looking to see how price reacts off of this level. And if price does make a reaction and we do see the significance behind the reaction, then we can potentially make a setup from it. So what we see happening at this level is price has gone up to these highs, a large volume of buyers start to enter, and selling starts to come in a little bit, right? And this is highlighted by the footprint, right? Let's take a look into the inside of each and every candle. Take a look at what happened at those highs.
Absorption in few sellers.
Sorry, that was the Bookmap YouTube channel, but take a look at what happened near these highs. What we saw was absorption of the buyers. And how can I say this with so much confidence? First, take a look at where majority of the volume is being placed in this candle. it's near the top, right? You can clearly see by this bulge right there, right? Additionally, what do we see in terms of delta at these highs with large amount of volume? We see that lots of buyers are getting in near these highs. Alongside that, we're also seeing lots of sellers also getting near these highs. What this is telling me is that buyers buyers are entering at those highs where there are passive sellers sitting on the market, and on top of that, active sellers are also getting in where passive sellers are in the market. So what that shows to me is that buyers are trying to break through that level, but passive sellers are defending that level, and active sellers have also contributed to defending that level, showing that selling has shown a big introduction near these highs when previously there wasn't that big of a seller introduction before. It essentially lines up, right? Take a look at the delta as well. The delta is green, but it's barely green. And delta has been going more and more towards the negative. Delta change, it's been decreasing. But that's essentially the analysis for the top. We see buyer absorption, and we see the strength of this absorption because active sellers are also getting in here. And we can say that this is absorption and valid absorption because there is a barrier here that we can clearly see that passive sellers are defending. Now, we are still unsure because we don't want to go against the trend, especially when the trend is so strong like such here, right? We want to see clear confirmation because easily price could continue going upward. But what truly let this play out was because we started to see and we started to make that move downwards with pretty good volume. What do we see here throughout this entire candle? We see that selling is not only at the top, but it's also near the bottom as well. Selling is distributed throughout the candle, and that is showing to me that sellers are coming in with a good amount of strength. Now here we do have a buyer supporting barrier around that 870 level on Bookmap. But once again, if we take a look, we have easily broken through that. And if you look on the footprint chart, there isn't much to honestly be shown. We do see a decent amount of buyers entering there, but this is not at the point where this level has been broken. It's later on, and you will see why. What I'm seeing and why I know that the lower level is going to break is because buyers and sellers have essentially been in unison throughout this down move, in this candle at least, right? But still, the price is going down. That's showing me that sellers are coming in more aggressively than buyers, even though the delta is pretty in unison, right? Majority of it is sells, but it's nothing too significant, but price is still moving down. That's showing pretty good significance for the sell side. On top of that, as we're going down, we start to see lots of supporting barriers as well. Now, once he had broken it, look what happened here. A big seller supporting barrier had introduced itself, and you see a large volume of buyers entering near those highs, and that is demonstrated by delta here and here. You see large amount of volume coming in here, large amount of buying volume coming in here. This relative zone, we see large amounts of buying volume enter there, but that buying volume is getting defended by this passive selling that is going on around this 875 to 870 level here on Bookmap. That is showing to me that passive sellers are still defending price and that it's highly likely that the buyers won't hold and the price will continue moving towards the downside because so much buying is coming in but price is not moving up. Passive selling is apparent at this level, and we see an introduction of lots of hidden selling orders, 1,514 in particular. We see that happening, and we are more than happy to stay in the shorts. If this started to break, if the barrier started to break when we saw this aggressive delta, and if that buying delta was distributed throughout the candle, not just near the top, that would have given me more confidence that the buying was more aggressive throughout the candle and not just near the top. Because when buying delta is only near the top and price is still not breaking through, that shows to me that buyers are not as strong as they make it seem to be, and that selling may continue because it's not distributed throughout multitude of prices. What I would consider aggressive buying would be distribution of buyers. So if it was selling, take a look at the next candle here. This is a perfect example of aggressive selling because just take a look at this candle. You see multiple imbalances within the candle. Majority of the candle is significant selling delta and volume is distributed throughout the candle. This is a perfect example of aggressive selling candle. Now here, buyers start to become more aggressive, more aggressiveness within buyers. Just keep that in mind for later. So we see this selling barrier hold. And actually during that time as well, look what happens here. A buyer barrier actually shows up. But at that buying barrier, we start to see a decent amount of selling delta get introduced. But momentum is towards the downside. Buyers looks to have been getting absorbed. Icebergs are coming in. And this overall selling compaction has been with less volume, but has been spread out and more significant. So this is a very key area where you have to monitor reaction because if price had broken and cracked through that above barrier, then that could have been a moment where we had exited. But since this barrier held so nicely and price started aggressively falling towards the downside again, we stayed in the trade and we took a good profit. That was analysis of these two circles right here. But you might be wondering, why did we exit there? That's such a random area to exit. I totally understand, but let me tell you exactly why. We exited there because there was news getting released at 9:30 a.m. CST, and this was around 9:27. Typically, we want to be flat in a 5-minute interval within the news period, and we want to exit. We were going to exit around 29 if we didn't see opposition. But what we saw on the footprint chart, I'll show you. What we saw on the footprint chart was that aggressive buying was coming in throughout this candle, like thus, especially near the bottom as well. And although this doesn't seem like it, that's simply because of the time frame of the candle. If you go onto the 1 minute, you can see it better, but unfortunately we are quite far away from that time period, so we cannot go back there. But essentially, how it looked was that a large amount of buying was getting introduced near the bottom, and near that area, there was a buyer supporting barrier. And what that indicated to me is that active buyers, are supporting the passive buyers, which typically shows that this barrier may hold. If sellers were coming in here with a lot of strength or a lot of delta, but sellers could not continue moving down, that could also be a signal that this could hold if we see a reaction off of such. But, or if we saw distributed selling entering into that area and the price not getting supported nicely, then we could estimate it to break. But here we saw aggressive buying enter near the bottom. Active sellers were not present around that area. So this showed us that price may stall or reverse from that area as well. And that is where we exited for a nice realized gain of a 2.48 risk to reward. We placed our original stop up here because that was relative to that above barrier in which we created the trade in the first place. So still that's around a 1.75 to 2.5 risk to reward trade, which is pretty good. Now that we have analyzed this trade, let's go ahead and analyze these levels which I have marked out for analysis. If you want a more clear version of the reasoning behind this trade, just take a look at this text right here. That should tell you more than enough about the initial trade that we have taken. But now let's get into order flow analysis of these levels right here. Let's take a look at what happened down here at 9:35. You might be wondering why it says 10:30 here. It's because that's EDT and I'm in Central Time, so that is 1 hour ahead. I'm 1 hour prior. Okay, so what happened was right here. Let's take a look. What I see simply from Bookmap is that large amount of selling volume got introduced near these bottoms, but still passive buying remained within the market and price was holding that area. Take a look on footprint. What we see here is actually that distributed selling had entered within the candle. But one thing about this distributed selling is that the volume is also not distributed. The volume is near the lows of the candle. So what that is showing to me is that there is likely seller absorption happening near the bottom. Although there is distribution, there is barely any volume within these levels that make it significant. There's lots of volume here, lots of selling here, but price is unable to break through that level. Passive buyers are defending this area, even here as well. And buyers start to introduce themselves. So price starts to pop. Price starts to pop, yeah. And price makes a pretty good move towards the upside. Not bad move at all, but it is not great because now what we're doing is that we're simply moving from barrier to barrier to barrier. And that is not optimal market conditions. And you could have noticed that, and you would have stayed flat here as well because we do have pretty significant selling that is at that level, and nothing, honestly, nothing too significant for you to get long there because we are still trading from barrier to barrier, and it's within that 5 minute interval of trading. So you always want to be careful and such. Now, if buyers had popped more and we had seen aggressiveness in buying near the top as well that has been distributed, then potentially we could have headed higher. But if you entered this trade, it's likely that you would have got stopped break even or stopped for a little loss. Now moving forward, let's go ahead and analyze this level. And this level is marked purple because I did see a potential trade entry at that area. So let's get into that. Around 9:55. Yeah, so take a look at what's happening here. We see lots of aggressive selling in high volume enter into the market. All of this sell, all of this buying liquidity has been taken by the market. Now that doesn't mean that price has to reverse because we broke it. There's a good chance that price may continue going to the downside. But what we notice here is that price is popping back up and it's popping back up with a decent amount of strength. What we see here is that we see large amounts of volume get transacted near the bottom of this candle. And large amounts of selling delta that also gets distributed throughout the bottom of the candle, but selling does not hold. You likely could have got an entry around here because you clearly saw that price had gotten absorbed. Sellers have gotten absorbed, and you were also at a key level. Right around the area, we were at VWAP on NQ, we were at a 5 minute fair value gap, and we were at the V2 levels as well. That is showing me that price may reverse from that area and we might start to head up again because on a higher time frame, we are still bullish. Just keep that in mind. And because of that, there is more confluence within this trade, within this potential setup. Over here, there is decent confluence, but we are trading from barrier to barrier, and that's never really a good thing, and you want price action to be pretty good. Right after that, we saw pretty choppy price action, and it was good to be patient around there. But here, an entry definitely could have been found. You likely could have entered long around this area, would stop below it around maybe 40 ticks on ES, and you likely could have targeted around these highs right here. So that's a 1-to-1. That's not bad, but but you likely have buying support that you might see. Yeah, so what you see here is that we do have buying support, but and we do see that's at 860. At the bottom, that's 57. Yeah, so I see a decent amount of sellers coming in there. Nothing really I can notice from footprint chart. But if that lower barrier breaks, we might have exited because that is invalidation. And since we do see that barrier breaking, around 10, 11, 10, 15. Right here, we may exit. And another thing that shows us that if selling pressure occurs, that to exit, we see large amounts of buying volume near this upper barrier or buying delta, and price is now heading downward, showing that buyers likely got absorbed. And if selling come in, it can easily convert into aggressiveness. So definitely would have been an exit there. And if we were to exit around there, that would have been a 0.8 risk to reward, which is okay. Not the greatest, but it is a profit that was tested by price. And although that seems bad, your stop realistically would have already been break even because you placed your stop below that supporting barrier. That is how you manage risk in real time. This would have been this would have been a low risk to reward or a high risk to reward play simply because of risk management. But that's essentially analysis from here and here, because at those highs we saw that analysis for here and here, because at those highs we saw the absorption. This would have been a high risk to reward trade because of risk management. Now finally, let's see this leg down and this wick right here. And already, if you look on the footprint, we see large amounts of selling and large amounts of active buying come in near these lows. So you might be wondering what happened at those lows. Well, we have this buying barrier right here that is being defended by passive buying in the market, right? And active buyers are also defending that area, and a large amount of selling is not able to push price downwards. When you see this wick towards the upside, you likely could have gotten an entry there because you see that significance there. That would have likely even been a better entry model than this, because that would have been a pretty clear and open retracement play rather than a reversal play, because these two setups would have been a reversal model. So let's see how it would look if you entered there. Assuming that you entered maybe there, stop would have been pretty tight, around 18 ticks, and let's see what an optimal take profit is if we did not get invalidated. Well, look to have gotten invalidated around there. Which was around 60 or 59. Which is also a 1-to-1, around a 0.9 risk to reward, which is not the best risk to reward, but your entry definitely could have been better because you're seeing aggressiveness occur. And if your entry was better, you likely could have got a better trade there as well. But after this initial move, the market turned pretty choppy and there was low probability within these types of trades, because after this, price moved down heavily, came back down to that previous level, and then finally the buying started to kick in. But that's outside of the market session that we trade in, so that is going to be pretty much it for today. The highest probability to trade with the most confidence was the first one that we actually took, but there could have been a setup here as well if we were comfortable to it, and also a setup here, but market conditions were not the greatest there, allowing us to take profit, but not as much profit as you would have wanted. But there is that. That's pretty much it here for today. We analyzed the trade that we took. We analyzed multiple levels using order flow. And we looked over all of this as well. This has been a pretty long video, but a pretty in-depth video as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to join the Discord. The link is in the description down below. Lots of free resources that I highly recommend you guys to check out. Additionally, feel free to leave a comment down below. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions there as well. That's all I have here for today. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the next market analysis or trade recap session. I'll see you guys then. Bye.